Hi everybody, thanks for watching. I've gotten a couple requests as I've been posting these videos to do some voiceover to kind of explain my thoughts behind the process, and I've been a little hesitant to do so just out of self-consciousness. I think I feel a little weird sitting in a room talking to myself, and also I don't really feel like I have a whole lot of wisdom to share. I learn a lot from other people and when they talk about their drawings, but I kind of don't want anyone to discover that I'm just making this up as I go along. But maybe that's part of the process, and I figured maybe I'll try to kind of include some of you on that process of me figuring out what I'm doing. uh, so the point of this whole project of the 300 Days of Star Wars was to force myself to draw every day. It's something I don't do often enough, and I've tried before to find things that make me want to draw every day, and I usually just kind of crap out after a week or so. And then it occurred to me with episode 7 coming out this year, Star Wars is something I could draw every single day. So it's actually gone really well so far as motivating me to draw on a daily basis. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. And I appreciate those of you who are following along and your support and kind words. And it certainly helps. So about this sketch, this is one I did a few weeks ago. But I'm trying out my new audio equipment for this voiceover, kind of seeing how this process goes, so I figured I would try it on a video I haven't yet posted. I set the task for myself to redesign Darth Vader's helmet, and by no means am I attempting to outdo the wonderful Ralph McQuarrie or the other artists that originally came up with the design, because I can't even come close. But I remember reading that one of the early briefs for the helmet was a samurai helmet mixed with a gas mask. So I wanted to kind of take that as a prompt and see what I would have come up with. And as I probably commented when I posted, I'm glad that Ralph McQuarrie did it, because I like his a lot better. But Vader's one of my favorite characters, so he's a lot of fun to draw, and I thought it could be fun to take another angle at it. So as you see, process-wise, I start out with a blue pencil. Sometimes I'll start out with a red pencil. It depends on the subject matter, but I tend to think of Vader in cooler colors than warmer colors. So I'll start out with a blue pencil. I'll eventually erase it when I come back and do inks, but sometimes it doesn't erase all the way, and a blue pencil under some warm grays or warm colors will really stand out and it'll kind of smudge weird. So knowing that I'm going to make this mostly cool colors, I went in with blue. It doesn't really matter, but just kind of what I do. And you obviously can't see here. This is just me filming myself on my drawing table. On my computer monitor next to me, I've got a whole bunch of images of samurai helmets, gas masks, just kind of various reference that I think have cool elements that I can work into it, and I just pick and choose what parts I like. I'm trying to keep these just really quick sketches. I think this actually took about 45 minutes. This is playing at 4 times the speed right now. So for these, I don't go into a ton of research. If I were actually developing this as a design, I would probably do 10 or 12 of these until I come up with an idea that I really like. But this is just a sketching exercise. So there's some elements I like, some I didn't. I'll probably take a stab at this again and have some fun with it. It was a lot of fun. As I mentioned, this is playing back at 4 times the speed. I'm recording this audio afterwards because I have a really hard time sketching and talking at the same time. I'm having a hard time talking just watching the sketch, trying to think about my process. But as I sketch, it's just the other side of my brain, and I can't really put words together while I'm drawing. So that's why I'm recording this afterwards. So here I'm using a brush pen that has been recommended by a handful of other artists who I admire. Jake Parker among them. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's a fantastic draftsman and has been a big inspiration for this project for me, motivating me to draw every day. And he's amazing, so definitely check him out. He has mentioned this pen before in some of his posts, and he has amazing control over this pen. It's difficult. You can get a really thin line or a really thick line, and it's very responsive to pressure. So it takes a while to kind of get tuned into that. I feel like I'm starting to maybe get a hang of it, but like I said, this whole project is to get me to push myself, try new techniques, new tools, and just draw more. So I'm hoping by the end of the 300 days, I'll at least be moderately, almost proficient with these brush pens. I really like the kind of lively line you can get out of them. I really like using technical pens too, and I'll go back and forth, as you'll see in a minute. But there's just something about this brush pen. If you can do it right, it looks fantastic. I will not claim that I've done it right yet, but it's fun. It's fun trying. So, like I mentioned, over the blue pencil, I'll come in with this brush pen, do kind of the broad strokes, and I'll eventually come back in with a technical pen for some of the details, as we'll see in a little bit. As I'm drawing this, I'm trying to keep the focus on the face, put a little more detail, a little more interest in the face. There's obviously a lot of stuff going on overall in the helmet, but in any design, you kind of want to put the emphasis of your design where you want the viewer to look. And obviously with Darth Vader, you want to be overwhelmed by his scale and presence, but ultimately terrified of his face. So that's kind of what was going through my mind as I was doing this, just pulling elements of different samurai helmets that I found, different gas masks that I thought looked creepy or imposing, and then adding another layer of kind of my own ideas. This mask doesn't look completely like any one mask, at least I hope not. I try to add my own stuff to it. Same with the helmet. Try to add some elements to it that don't just make it look like I'm grabbing one helmet, sticking a mask on it. And that's something I'm trying to push myself to do also, to add more of my own interpretation to it. But you'll see I'm coming in with a technical pen for some of the details. Sometimes I just have a hard time getting thin lines out of that brush without, I kind of Hulk smash it and lose any subtlety with it. So I'll come in with a technical pen and I'll go back and forth. You can kind of see here, just putting little details in, little Death Star medallions on those, I don't know what those are called, but little panels that come off the sides there. I don't think about it a whole lot. I try to step back, look at it as a whole, see what it might be missing, and go in and put that in as I go back. Like I said, there's about a 45-minute sketch, so not a whole lot of time to really massage things or do too much detail. But as you see, I erased the blue pencil out somewhat. It's not completely gone. I like to leave some of that there, but I didn't want it interfering too much with the marker. I wanted to go with some red details, because you see a lot of that in samurai armor. Not a whole lot in Vader, except for his lightsaber, of course. But I wanted to kind of bring some of those elements in. Then I'm coming in with a warm gray for some of these elements, some of the metallic parts. And then I'm going to come in a second with a cool gray for the bulk of the armor. For some reason, just for me, Vader feels more like a cool gray kind of guy than a warm gray. And that might just be the lighting I'm used to, or I don't know. I might just be completely making that up. But I'll come in with kind of a lighter, this is lighter than it will wind up, obviously, a lighter cool gray, so that I can come back to this as the kind of the highlight or the lighter areas. Then I'll come back in with a darker cool gray for the shadows and kind of most of it. Obviously, he's black, shiny armor. You look at a lot of samurai helmets, they're not quite as shiny. They're kind of leather or different materials that aren't quite as shiny as the plastic kind of armor that wound up on Vader. But obviously there was some specularity, and I'll come back in with that in a little bit. Right now, just trying to define the form with dark, cool gray markers, refining certain things, making things set back a little bit. Basically, I just kind of sit back and see what else looks like it needs to be done. It's kind of like putting out a bunch of little fires. Some things will only stand out once I've gotten a couple steps down the line, and then I'll realize, like, oh, this thing's sticking out way too much, or it's not sticking out enough. We've got to push things back behind it, add some shadows there, and then, as we'll see in a minute, I'll come in with a white paint pen. This is a water-based paint pen. I've tried oil-based. They just don't seem to have the opacity, or at least the one I got didn't. The opacity I was looking for. But I'll come in with this white paint pen to kind of bring out some of the highlights, give it a little shine here and there, help push and pull some of those forms. Then, come back in with the brush pen and kind of give it a loose border. I tend to like putting these little boxes behind stuff, just some sort of shape to ground it on the paper. I don't know. It's just, sometimes there's a reason for doing things. Sometimes I just feel like it needs a little bit more, and because these are sketches, a lot of it's experimenting. It's wondering, oh, what more does this need? Then I'll throw something in, and then sometimes I realize afterwards, I guess it didn't really need that, but it was in ink, so I can't erase it. So I just like to pretend, I meant for it to look like that. Forget what I said earlier about, I totally meant for it to look like that. Now I'll give it a little bit of an outline with the white, just help separate it from that background a little bit. Sometimes I like how that looks, sometimes I regret doing that and I wish I could color back over it, but the markers don't color over the white super well. In this case, I think it works fine. Again, it gets to the point where the markers have dried and I realize some things need to be a little darker. These markers tend to not dry the exact same color or value when you first lay them in. So, or if you draw over something that's already wet, they'll blend together. So sometimes I'll come back later once they've dried a little bit. If I really need to get a dark shadow that I want, a sharper shadow, kind of like under that visor, I'll come back in once the markers have dried, and then they don't tend to bleed together. You get kind of some sharper shadows on them. I like to use the Copic markers. The ink is, well, they're refillable for one thing, so it's a lot cheaper than just buying new markers all the time. But I really like the way the inks work. They're actually alcohol based, I believe, so you can use even rubbing alcohol to kind of paint back in and blend them together later. So that's that sketch. I like how it turned out, and I hope you do too. If you want to see more videos, just subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm hoping and trying to do these more frequently. It all depends on what kind of time I have. And drop me a line, any comments or anything, requests for other things you'd like to see. I've got, at this point, about 222 days left to go, so I don't feel that I'm running out of ideas yet. I think about Star Wars about 90% of my waking hours, but if you have any ideas that you really want to see, then let me know. And like I said, subscribe. My website's timothyAndersonart.com. You can follow my work there. Thanks for tuning in, and I will hopefully have more to share later. Thanks.